This is the April 27, 2023 scheduled meeting of the St. Joseph County Election Board.
Can't hear you.
That's probably because I don't have a microphone. Here, this one's yours. Okay. Okay, how's that? Better? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled April 27, 2023 St. Joseph County Election Board meeting. Would everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Our next order of business is our hearing on complaint raised by Jordan Geiger with respect to some candidates, and the complaint alleges that the candidates apparently alleged to have done some electioneering in the voting area on the first floor of the county city building. And so I understand that Mr. Agostino is here. Mr. Geiger, have you made it yet? There we go. Okay. So Mr. Geiger called me just before the meeting to send me the video which he had obtained. I, being a self-professed old Luddite, saw John outside and forwarded it to him. He's our tech guru. He's working on it right now so that it can come up at some point. I haven't seen it. You just forwarded it to me in a text message, so I haven't seen it yet. So I think what we should do going forward is let's ask Mr. Geiger, why don't you come forward, and we'll swear you in, and then you can testify to what you believe you saw and what you think was wrong about what you saw. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and come forward and give us your name and your address?
Yeah, Jordan Geiger, 302 South Falcon Street. That's South Bend, Indiana, 46619.
Okay.
So I can just explain what I...
Well, let me just do this. For anyone who is considering or thinks that they might testify, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Okay, and Jordan, would you raise your right hand as well? Do anyone who's going to testify swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So,
Thank you. You can sit down. Okay, Mr. Geiger, tell us what your complaint is and what evidence you think you have to support your complaint.
yeah, so I came on Friday, I think it was Friday, April 14th. It was the day we had to file our finance reports. I came into the front entrance of the county city building, and as I walked in and made it through the security checkpoint, I was approached by Jody Freed, and she was standing with Karen White and Bianca Tirado. And they were standing next to the polling stations, or the stations where you go and early vote. I was a little alarmed by that. Jody came and approached me. She asked me if we had an issue. I said, no, I don't even know her. I've never had a conversation with her other than the fact that she messaged me on Facebook Messenger about 3 weeks ago. But I've never had a conversation with her in person, never met her in person. So then I just proceeded. I was with Bruce Mitchell and Laquita Hughes, and we went down to the county clerk's office in the election division and filed our finance reports. While there, I asked if it was legal for candidates to be standing within 20 feet of the polling stations, or the stations where folks go and early vote. And I was told that that could be potentially a violation. And I know that based on past experience, I remember in 2019, Oliver Davis, Regina Williams-Preston, and a number of other candidates were standing outside of the main doors, I guess within 50 feet of the doors, and the election board officials approached them and told them that they were in violation of the law by where they were standing. So I was just taken aback by the fact that you have candidates who were standing so close to the polling stations. Obviously, at the time, I didn't have any hard evidence. Some members of the county clerk's office said that they would go up and check. But as we were leaving to go upstairs, the other candidates were coming down, I guess, to file their finance reports. And so I reached out to you to see if I could file a complaint in order to have some kind of investigation take place. And then I was told that I could do so. And then I also filed an APRA request to get the main lobby video footage, and I gave them a timestamp. And so I just received that video evidence just before this meeting around 4 o'clock. So I've shared that with the chairman here, and I have it on my phone, or I can send it to whomever.
Okay. I think on that particular point, we want to wait to see if John's able to upload it. He was checking on his computer to see if he's able to run it and then upload it so that it'll be available to us. So I think we'll probably just kind of jump around on that a little bit if we hear back from him. Is there anything further that you would like to ask?
No, that's it.
Mr. Augustino, you're here in a representative capacity, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to ask Mr. Geiger any questions?
Yes, I would.
Feel free.
Okay. My name is Peter Augustino, attorney at law, offices at 131 South Taylor Street. And I am here on behalf of Karen White, Bianca Terada, and Jody Freed, who I understand is who your complaint's directed at. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, may I call you Jordan?
Yeah.
All right. You probably need to get close to the microphone so people can hear you, too. Jordan, you and I had a chance to talk a couple of days ago, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, I gave you a call on your cell phone. You were
Hey,
at the-
Pete, could both of you lean into the mic more when you speak so it gets picked up better? Thanks.
I called you on your cell phone, and you happened to be at the hospital at the time, is that correct?
Right, yep.
Okay. And remember, I had asked you if you had any video of what you were complaining about, is that correct?
Yes, and I told you that I had filed an APRA request.
Okay, that you did not make a video yourself, but that you filed
Right.
to get one from the county, is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
And then I asked you if you had overheard anything that indicated that any of the people that you saw there were campaigning in any way, is that correct?
Correct.
And you said that they were not?
Right.
Okay. In other words, nobody was handing out political material, is that correct?
Correct.
And nobody was encouraging anyone to vote for anybody?
Not that I witnessed.
Okay, and that nobody was wearing any clothing with anyone's name that was a candidate or a party, is that correct?
No.
Okay, you didn't see any of that?
No.
All right. And then, did you look at the video?
Yeah.
The video also depicts you and Bruce Mitchell greeting each other too, does it not?
I only saw up until, I didn't see when we came in. I
Okay.
didn't see that part of it.
All right. That's all I have, thank you.
I've got a few questions too, so you might want to follow up, Mr. Augustino. Mr. Geiger, did you ask these candidates were you able to determine whether or not they were actually voting that day?
I think Jody Freed might have had a I voted sticker on, and then I think Karen had posted a Facebook video later in the day that showed that she had early voted.
Okay. And how much time, from the time you entered into the building, how much time lapsed between the time you entered the building and the time that they approached you to chat with you?
Oh, I would say, what was Jody Freed who approached me? 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see them talking to other people who were waiting to vote?
I did not see that, no.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Chuck?
Mr. Geiger, where exactly were they standing? You said Jody Freed approached you when you came in.
Yeah.
But for the other two, where actually were they standing?
Yeah, so when you enter, when you cross the security checkpoint,
Right.
directly ahead there is a table, a long, wooden table, and they were standing at the table.
Okay, and talking to each other at that location?
Right.
Were they behind it or in front of it?
They were in front of it. So they were in front of it and close to the voting stations.
Did you notice, was there anybody in line to vote at that point?
I didn't see that.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're about to be able to see the video. Is that right, John? You might not have to. You might ask them. Yeah. I mean, that's true. Mr. Geiger, let us know when you can identify yourself, when you see yourself. Okay. Is this them? Is it- How long have they been there?
So this is the 3-minute clip, but there's a longer, like 18-minute video that I also share with you.
And this clip shows you coming in?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So that one does not show you coming in yet? You have not arrived yet, is that right?
Right, no.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Augustine, do you have any other follow-up questions? No. Okay. Chuck? Amy? Okay. Okay, thanks, Mr. Geiger.
Yeah.
We can either call them or you can, Mr. Augustino, at your pleasure. Call your witnesses.
I would ask you to dismiss the complaint at this point because there's been no evidence to substantiate any electioneering.
Well, I'd like to hear from your witnesses first.
Well, I'd ask the board to make a motion then, one way or the other then.
Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'd like to hear what Karen and Bianca have to say.
Do you want to make that motion? To dismiss the complaint? No. No gravitas at this point to make that motion up here. So why don't you call your witnesses?
I think there needs to be a motion to proceed for the board to examine.
Why do you think that? We're in the middle of a hearing.
Statute? I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think if you're going to do this right, then let's have a official action by the board.
Well, we already, at our last meeting, we already voted unanimously to conduct this hearing. Is that not official action enough?
Well, I don't think it is, but I'm not going to belabor it. I'll call my witnesses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Would Bianca Tirado and Karen White please step forward? Go ahead and state your name.
Bianca Tirado.
Karen White.
Okay. Now, there's a complaint that's been made, which is somewhat ambiguous, about you being in the County City Building on April 14th, but you both were in the County City Building, is that correct?
Yes,
And you were depicted in the video, correct?
yes.
During the time that you were in the County City Building as depicted in the video, or any time that you were there that day, did any of you, either of you, try to engage in any campaign activity of any kind?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Did any of you try to hand out information about political candidates, including yourself?
No,
Did either one of you try to encourage anyone to vote a particular way on anything?
no,
Okay. Were either of you wearing any clothes that had your name or a name of a political party?
no,
Did you do anything at all that you considered to be like encouraging anyone to vote or not vote in any way?
no.
Okay. Can you tell us generally what you were talking about then when you ran into each other?
Well, first of all, we did not agree to meet. It was just individuals, as Mr. Jordan had indicated, two of us were coming to turn in our reports. So I had no knowledge that Jody was going to be there, no Bianca. I actually voted that day, and then they were coming in, and we, saw each other, and we just really was talking about the weather. Was no political conversations whatsoever.
On April 14th, I walked into the County City Building to file my finance report. I saw Councilmember White standing there, and along with Jody Freed, and I asked Councilmember White, did she want to walk down and file her report?
Do you have any other questions, Mr. Augustino?
Did either of you witness Jordan Geiger come in?
Yes.
Did he also interact with other candidates,
No.
to your knowledge?
Only thing I saw that he walked in, of course, himself and with other candidates, and we just waved and said hi. At least I did. I can only speak for myself.
Okay, no more questions of these witnesses?
Okay, just as Ms. White, as 2 points of clarification, you are a candidate for office in this election cycle, right?
That is correct.
And the same is true with you, Mr. Tirado, right? Ms. White, did you say that you had voted and then you had already voted when you were?
No, I was coming down into the building to vote. I had my financial reports with me. That's all I had. And I decided, because there was not a lot of people voting at that time, I said, let me go ahead and vote and get it out the way.
So when we saw you on the footage here, had you already voted?
I couldn't see it. I'm sorry.
Oh, you don't know if you had or not?
Yeah, I know I voted, but I couldn't tell on the footage because I could not see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. I don't have any other questions. No questions. Okay. Do you have any questions, Amy? Okay. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, from both of you, I do have additional questions. Subsequently, you had a conversation with people in voter registration / the clerk's office, right?
If I recall correctly, it was when I was going down to take my report, a representative from the election office had indicated that she received a call. And I said, oh, about what? Saying that, you were too close or something to that nature. And I said, well, why did they not mention that? And I would have moved. That's the only conversation I had.
Was that in person?
It was when I was walking, taking my financial papers
Was
at the
that
lower
with Ms.
level.
Carrico here? Do you remember? Or Ms. Riskovitz here?
It was, yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
And she approached me, if I'm not mistaken. I was walking down the lower level with my financial statement, and then she said, "Oh, I got a call." And I said, "Well, all they had to do is, say, then I would, moved." So that was very surprising. If I'm not mistaken, that was the extent of that conversation.
Mr. Rado, did anyone talk with you from the clerk's office or voter registration?
Yes, as Ms. White and I were walking downstairs in the basement, after we passed security, someone approached us about the complaint.
Okay. And was there any resolution, as far as you know, to that from them?
We just stated, oh, we didn't know. We wish if someone saw us, they should have said something, but we didn't. There was no, complaint or anything after that.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have. Mr. Geiger, do you have anything else you want to bring forward?
No, I don't have anything else. I just want to ask, when, Bianca, when you said, when you responded, you said, "We didn't know." What is it that you didn't know? Is that okay for me to ask a
Yeah.
question?
We didn't know that we were in any violation.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
So I'll speak first and then offer, and then, do you want to make a closing statement?
Well, I have additional
Oh.
evidence I'd like to submit.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
That's an affidavit of Jody Freed, who could not be here on short notice.
That's fine. Thank you.
Pete, why don't you make sure that Joe Rice also gets a copy for the record?
So the affidavit that I've given you also, I think, confirms what's been testified to already.
Thank you. I will note, and of course, this will be part of our record, but I will note that one thing that's a little bit distinct is Ms. Freed does indicate that she had already voted when she had the chance encounter with Ms. Tirado and Ms. White. And for election law reasons, that has a little bit more significance to it, which I'll explain. Do you have anything else that you wanted to present, Mr. Agostino?
Not at this time, but I reserve the right to do so.
You do? So noted. So one of the things that has been our experience, and when I say our, I'm referring to Mr. Leone and me, since we've been on the election board, is that the issue of electioneering seems to be a dicey one, and it comes up with some frequency. And it takes a lot of inquiry on our part to try to get to the bottom of it. There are other issues that have come up, with people not having their yard signs correct or the font on their yard signs correct and things like that. And I think I can speak for both of us, our approach, and I think our clerk also probably shares this philosophy too, that our approach to these kinds of things is to get to the bottom of them and to kind of focus on intent as much as anything else, because everybody who becomes a candidate gets a fairly substantial book of election law, and it takes a lot to go through, and it takes a lot to become real familiar with it. And so our position in the past has been, particularly with issues related to the signage and those kinds of things, and even more recently with submitting financial reports on time, is that if we get to the bottom of it and we get it corrected, then we're not really all very much interested in sanctioning or fining or anything of that nature, because we realize that people are, they're putting themselves out there to run for office, and there's a lot to that, and there's a lot to stay on top of. So from a technical perspective, for those of you who aren't aware, the state does not allow electioneering to occur within 50 feet of the chute. Well, the chute is the 50 feet from the entrance to the place where the voting booths are, or the voting pads, or whatever we're using are. So you can imagine, if everyone's familiar with downstairs here, when you come in, probably that whole front area, I didn't measure it, but that whole front area might constitute being part of the chute, because you've got all that voting machinery right to the left of security right when you come in. So that makes it kind of a dicey place for electioneering related issues, as opposed to if you're out at Schmucker Middle School and you walk in a door, and then you bend down this door, this hallway, and then this hallway, and then back over here, and then you come into the room where the machines are. So it's a little bit murkier. And also the fact that it's a much more public place where there's a lot of business going on, a lot of people coming and going. The possibility that people would run into each other by chance is pretty commonplace. It happens to me with great frequency, and I'm sure it's happened to many of you too. So in listening to what everyone has said, well, by the way, candidates are allowed in the voting area only to vote. So that's hence the questioning about when was voting happening and that sort of thing. So, but at the same time, how else are you going to get down to the basement except to walk right past an area? So technically, any candidate who walks in the building is within the voting area, and if they're not voting, technically that would seem a violation. It seems to be a little heavy-handed. I'm a little bit concerned that Ms. Freed had voted already, because once you vote as a candidate, you're supposed to turn around and leave just like everyone else, precisely so that no one seems to think that you are, hanging around to influence votes. But, oh, she's not a candidate? Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought she was a candidate. Well, then I'm even less concerned. My conclusion to that was, had she been a candidate, was that's an innocent enough a mistake from my perspective on this particular occasion in this location. So my feeling is that if there was anything that was incorrect with the letter of the law, that it was not intentional, and it certainly is not something that I would consider sanctionable at this point. And that's my perspective, and I just open the floor for your comments as well.
Well, I do agree with that, and I'd also like to point out the fact that it was the day when the filings were due, which means there would have been candidates coming in. It's that's a perfectly normal thing to happen on that day. So, yeah, I see no problem with this.
And from my perspective, I didn't see anything that rose to the level of electioneering as the statute defines it. There was, what we see in electioneering cases are people who wear certain things, either hats or buttons, things like that mention a candidate. Those kinds of things are prohibited. And I also understand that the county city building lobby is particularly difficult because the chute itself isn't, in almost all of the other vote centers, the chute is fairly well defined, and there are signs that kind of delineate it, mark it off. If we did that in the county city building, as soon as you went through security, you'd be in the chute, and if you're prohibited from doing that, you can't get in the building. So it makes it a little bit tough. So there probably ought to be some ways that we can, this would help us, I think, in future years to kind of think about how to define that better in a way that makes it clear that this is the area that is reserved for voters only, people who are intending to vote, and then for everybody else, just please, take this way around. I think that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah, and it might also be a good idea for us to, as part of our packet that we give to candidates, is to remind them, hey, this is this is a pretty dicey place to be hanging around during the election cycle. I mean, it is commonplace and natural for people to stand around and talk out in the lobby there, but if you're a candidate, it's probably not a good idea. The optics of it aren't so great during the election cycle, and so that might be something for us to remind people that this particular location has a little bit of a pitfall, a little for candidates when it comes to that, because I was trying to figure out how long the candidates were standing right in that area, and it did seem like it was a little bit of time, but again, there's not any evidence that you're doing any electioneering. That said, I appreciate that Mr. Geiger brought this to our attention. I appreciate that, because everything that we try to do here is to make sure that the elections runs more smoothly, and that we, as best we can, educate the candidates and the public as to what we can and cannot be doing in the election cycle. So I appreciate not only that you brought it to our attention, but the manner in which you presented your evidence. I appreciate Mr. Agostino's presentation and your witness's presentation as well. And I think it was helpful for us to say, hey, here's a spot that we're now identifying as someplace that we need a little bit more scrutiny of as a board so that we can try to avoid this kind of thing in the future. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to dismiss the complaint.
I move to dismiss the complaint.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the records reflect that the motion carried unanimously. Thank you all for being here and for your participation. Yeah, we will. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that as other business. Other business is the catch-all. Pete, are you sticking around for a little bit? We're going to be done in probably a minute or two, but there's something I wanted to share with you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, moving on. We have other business to discuss, one of which is, really isn't other business, but I forgot to put it on the agenda, which is just for us to approve the minutes of our last meeting. I'll entertain a motion for that.
I move to approve the minutes from our last meeting on April 18, 2023.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion carries unanimously. The other business that we are going to mention but not take up really fully today is the complaint that we received. I think it was this morning, Ms. Clace, is that right? You emailed us this morning?
It might have been late last night.
Okay.
You may have received it this morning, that's correct.
Well, and it's a complaint about the concern that Mr. McManus had raised about Andrew Jones and the issue of whether or not there's a conflict of interest.
Let me be clear. It's my concern that it's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Simply because Mr. McManus raised that concern, he can do that. I have my own concerns.
Right, I'm just for the record indicating Mr. McManus had previously raised it, and we said we would look into it. I've responded to your email and with my position on it, and invited Mr. Leone. He's indicated that he'd like to look into it a little bit longer before he weighs in on it, and so I had indicated tonight that we would at least address it in other business, but I think if you're fine with us just tabling it until Mr. Leone has an opportunity to look into it and he can weigh in on it as well, and then if we need to, make a motion or some kind of resolution or something like that, then we'll address it at that point, if that's okay.
And if I can be of any help answering any questions, I would be more than happy.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to public comments, let's,
I have one thing that I need to report,
Oh.
and it needs to be in the record, so.
Okay.
All of the equipment was delivered to the voting sites today, but of note was that at Edison, I forget whether it's middle or elementary school, at Edison School anyway, our delivery team reported that they changed the location of where the vote center was going to be. It was in the past in the small gym at door 7, and they're telling me it's in room 110, which is something called a food lab, and the entrance is door 24. Now, we specifically don't want them to change it, and we hadn't gotten the contact information back from Edison. There is a brand-new principal there, which means he may not even be aware of the situation, and this was their custodian. So I will have a conversation with, and I know nothing about this space. I don't know how big it is. I don't know anything about its accessibility, nothing. And so I will have a conversation tomorrow with the building and grounds supervisor from South Bend to figure out why they did that, what that space looks like, and determine whether or not it's something we can even, use. In this election, it's likely that we could use it because we're not expecting 2,000 people. But we don't want to start a trend where they just tell us all the spaces we use were supposed to be told to us in advance for us to investigate to figure out if they were large enough, and this, to me, seems last minute. I'm also mentioning that because depending on what I find out tomorrow, I may need our election board attorney to weigh in and help us to get where it needs to be, so.
And we will be in session for training purposes over the next few days, so if
Right.
that issue needs to be on the agenda, and we need to take any action, just please let
I
us know.
will let you know how that comes out, but I will, and he told me on the phone that he would sign those sheets and send them back, which isn't the same as the building principal doing it, but I don't have it yet. He was going to copy me, and I don't know if Donna Hurley got them or not, but I suspect not, because she usually forwards them to me. So I have to talk to him about that in the morning, too, so that's where we are with the sites. As far as I know, all of the rest of them are fine, so. But the entry door would be of note to particularly the parties and the candidates, knowing where to go to get in the building, so.
So you'll follow up on that and get back with us?
I will.
Thank
I'll
you.
have a conversation with him sometime tomorrow morning or midday, and we'll see where it is, and we'll see how that goes, and then we'll find out. I may have to go there to look at the space,
Well, thank you. That'll be
Yeah.
great.
May I make a public comment about this?
We're not going to go to, we still have other business first, so you'll be able to make a public comment, but we're not ready for that yet. We've got other business to address. Amy, why don't you go ahead and raise these issues? We've got some issues with potential ethical concerns about providing things of value to some of our workers who are also voters, right? Can you
Right. Our absentee early vote workers, both in South Bend and in Mishawaka, I believe it was last Saturday, received a pizza lunch. And that, of course, was very welcomed. It was provided by
That was Jason Critchlow.
Jason Critchlow,
Yeah.
provided that, the pizza lunch.
And
then
he's not a candidate
And
on
he
the
is not a
ballot.
candidate.
No.
He's not a candidate on the ballot. However, just a couple of days ago, Subway lunch boxes were delivered to all of the absentee early vote workers in both Mishawaka and South Bend. And I believe it was partially sponsored by Debbie Ladega Block, who is a candidate on the ballot this year. So we, as an election board, I think we need to address these kinds of issues. And so we need to have a discussion about that.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's proper for, and also there's more to it too. You guys have reached out to our Elections Commission experts in Indianapolis. And I think they've both shared some concern, particularly with regard to a candidate, because the absentee vote workers are also voters themselves. I think there's even more to it than that. I don't think that our political I think those kinds of meals, if we're going to be providing meals for our workers, that they should come from our budget and not from private donations. This came up last time when this room was filled with 100 and some odd people, and we were working until 10:30 at night, and we got pizzas for everyone, and we didn't know if there was a budget for it or not, and Mr. Leone and I said, well, if there's not a budget for it, then we'll take care of it and figure that out later on, because, I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with making sure our workers aren't fainting at work because they're not getting time to eat. But I don't know, do they have break time? Do they bring their own meals?
Yes. Yeah, we have lunchtime for like central count, and the ladies down in the absentee, they have breaks that they take as well. I think this is more of an ethic thing. Is this,
Yeah.
you know, something that we should maybe draw lines and make it very structured so everybody knows what is acceptable and what is not? So there's not a misinterpretation of meals being provided to our workers, where people may think that it's a favor or something like that. I personally know that that's not the intent. I feel that they're doing something to show appreciation, but we need some ground rules so that the perception isn't otherwise.
Okay, I agree that we probably need to look into this and come up with some basic ground rules if we don't already have them, or if the state hasn't already provided them to us.
The
Well,
state
the
doesn't.
state does.
Yeah, well, not in this regard.
Right.
So this has been reviewed by both me and the county attorney, Mr. Mish, and the only thing that could possibly cover this would be things like criminal statutes that require proving intent and things like that, that I don't think there's been no showing of anything nefarious here. This is just a kind act done by a couple of different folks. But at the same time, there's always the question of appearances, and Mr. Mish has suggested, to Ms. Rolfus and I that just a formal policy be adopted by the election board in this regard, probably prohibiting this, as well as an offer to reimburse the two folks that did purchase those meals, just to set it straight. I mean, this is a delicate situation because obviously it doesn't appear there's any kind of ill intent or anything like that. It's just that there is, we don't engage in some war where candidates are fighting over who gets to buy lunch for people, and, it could get out of hand. So I think it was Mr. Mish's suggestion, and it's my suggestion as well, that this board consider a formal policy in this regard, just so there are some proper guidelines.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think probably if I'm okay with you working with Mr. Mish to come up with a proposal for us.
Wonderful.
If you are, Chuck? Yeah? Okay.
Guidance of some sort.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else under other business? All right, we're now moving into public comments.
Pam Clays, 1106 Bellevue, South Bend. I've had a brief momentary lapse. What were we talking about? That was my comment. It was
I
important.
think one of the fact that one of the election rooms was moved at one of the schools, at Edison School.
Yes, thank you. Prior to the start of this new election board, prior election board meetings, every meeting was talked with the two voter registration representatives. How is it coming with the locations? Have you had contacts with them? There has been none of that this whole election preparatory scene. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody at the last minute is changing a door. This has been on my concern list probably since early March. Because before, Rita would ask, and the Democrat and the Republican, yes, we've talked with this one, we know we have to talk with this one, Adams was a big one, nothing's been done. So I'm disappointed in this. I don't think it was full enough. And it doesn't surprise me that something like this is going to happen, and it's going to disenfranchise voters who think they go to one door and they don't know where the other door is if there are tons of doors. I think the actions promote disenfranchisement of voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, well, then we're on a break. We're not adjourning because we're going to have our training of election clerks, sheriffs, and Democrat judges starting at 6:30. So we are now on a break, and we'll be back at 6:30. Thank you.